Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of our annual Rural West Conference, People and Places Unlocking the Central Valley's Potential in California's Climate Future. For those who weren't here yesterday, my name is Kate Gibson. I'm the Associate Director of the Bill Lane Center for the American West at Stanford. I'm also from Fresno, so I'm really thrilled that that we're able to come. The president is on his way, and so I want to just wanted to just take the time to thank a few people while we're waiting for him. So I first wanted to thank Hope Eccles and the Eccles family, Robert Taroon and others for supporting our Rural West initiative and allowing great events like this to happen. I also wanted to thank Ashley Swearingen, President Jiménez-Sandoval, and Provost Fu for their early cheerleading and support of this program. I also wanted to thank all of our panelists and speakers, and our partners, the California Water Institute and the Maddie Institute. All of you have been amazing. You've been great partners to work with, and we really appreciate your help and hosting us here. I also wanted to thank our other sponsors, the Central Valley Community Foundation and the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. And then really, this couldn't happen without the people who did all the hard work. And so I wanted to thank our planning team and logistics team. So particularly Kaylee Rogers, Laura Ramos, Blake Zanti, Tanya Loeffler, Guadalupe Cruz, Eric Hayden, Charles Hillier, Thomas Holyoke, Michael Lukens, Crystal Tufaction. On the Lane Center side, Tina Lathia has really done a lot of the heavy lifting. Lydia Hailu, Kayala Carter, Esther Conrad, our other staff, Felicity Berenger, Kylie Gordon, Corinne Thomas, Jeff McGee, and all of our student volunteers. We have student volunteers from both Stanford and Fresno State working this event. So I was hoping that the people who helped plan this event and our student volunteers, if you could just quickly stand up so that we can recognize you. We really appreciate all your hard work. And our AV team. And then finally, before passing it off to Blake, I just wanted to give a special shout out to any Stanford alums and Fresno State alums, for that matter, who are able to join us today. Go Card and go Dogs. So with that, I would like to ask Blake Zanti to come up to introduce President Jiménez-Sandoval.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful morning in the Central Valley. My name is Blake Zanti, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Maddie Institute, a nonpartisan public policy institute established by the California Legislature in 1999. We're proudly affiliated with Fresno State, UC Merced, CSU Stanislaus, CSU Bakersfield, and as of last night's announcement, the State Center Community College District as well. Thank you. We are honored to partner in this important conference. I want to extend my sincere gratitude to the Bill Lane Center for the American West for selecting Fresno State and the Central Valley as the host for this event. And I also want to acknowledge our partners in the California Water Institute for their dedication and hard work in making this gathering possible as well. And of course, my staff at the Maddie Institute for their efforts behind the scenes. Now it is my distinct honor to introduce someone I have known for over a decade, dating back to my undergraduate years at Fresno State. Dr. Saúl Jiménez-Sandoval is the president of Fresno State, where he champions regional economic and cultural growth through higher education and research. An immigrant from Mexico who grew up working on his father's small farm in Fowler, California, he has a deep-rooted connection to the central San Joaquin Valley and has dedicated more than 2 decades serving the university. Since becoming president in 2021, Dr. Jimenez-Sandoval has led Fresno State to achieve R2 doctoral research status. This is a big deal, making it the only CSU in Central California with this distinction. Under his leadership, the university has secured a record-breaking $78.3 million in grants in 2023 and 2024, an 80% increase over the past 7 years, and launched a new 5-year strategic plan shaped by thousands of campus voices. His leadership is grounded in mentorship and collaboration, forging partnerships with organizations like Fresno Housing and the U.S. Army to address critical issues such as food and housing insecurity. A 2-time recipient of the Robert C. Maxson President of the Year Award, he also serves on several national boards and committees, including as co-vice chair of the EPA's Federal Advisory Council for Minority Serving Institutions. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Saúl Jiménez-Sandoval, President of Fresno State.
It's great to see all of you today. Good morning. How are you doing? Hope you're doing great. So first and foremost, welcome to Fresno State. It's my distinct honor to welcome all of you here today. Jody, nice to see you. Paul, great to see you as well. To the 11th Annual Eccles Rural West Conference in partnership with the Bill Lane Center for the American West and the Maddie Institute. I want to provide a special thanks to Kay Gibson, of whom you heard earlier, Associate Director of the Bill Lane Center at Stanford, for all she did to make today's conference a reality. I also want to send a special thank you to Joni, because she's the one who put us together originally, got this started. So thank you for that. Special thanks, of course, as well go to the Provost Fu, Blake Zante, the Executive Director of the Maddie Institute, and Laurel Ramos, the Director of the California Water Institute, and all of you who made this a reality today. The conference brings together thought leaders, researchers, policymakers, and practitioners to discuss critical issues facing rural communities in the Western United States. It is especially fitting that this conversation happen here, in the heart of the San Joaquin Valley, a region deeply connected to the challenges and opportunities of rural America. Though we are the 5th largest city in California, Fresno is, we also have the most rural people in the state. As we all know, we are the nation's breadbasket. We produce 25% of the nation's food in the region. And within this Valley of Plenty, Fresno State is a beacon of hope and opportunity. As a regional leader in agricultural research and water tech policy, Fresno State produces the next generation of Valley leaders. Our Jordan College of Agricultural Sciences and Technology is at the forefront of innovation and food production, water management, and sustainability. We are also home to the California Water Institute, which plays a key role in addressing the water challenges that impact agriculture and rural communities. In addition, we are also home, as you know, to the Maddie Institute, which is pivotal in training future policymakers in our region to address many of the challenges we will be discussing during this conference. The Maddie Institute is also currently developing an ag policy initiative, one that will explore, analyze, and present insights on all areas impacting agricultural policy and our rural valley communities. At Fresno State, we teach in an impactful way, and I'm very proud of that. Our faculty-to-student ratio ensures our students are interacting and interfacing with our faculty early on in their career. Our students, therefore, are exposed to faculty research right from the beginning of their study at this university. And our faculty conduct cutting-edge applied research, not theoretical, on various topics that shed light on life in our region, such as rural communities, climate adaptation, labor markets, and food security, issues that align with the themes directly of this conference. Fresno State is also a university deeply engaged in public service, preparing students to be the next generation of leaders in agriculture policy and community development. As an example, on an annual basis, we contribute at Fresno State 1.5 million hours of community service to our region. We are indeed, as you can see, an engaged university, deeply embedded and rooted within our diverse communities. I'm confident that this conference will bring it all together in a beautifully orchestrated way. The discussions will inspire new research, propose possible innovative solutions, and present career pathways to our students and our thought leaders. As 80%, I'm going to say that again, 80% of our students stay in the region after graduation, a stronger Fresno State represents a stronger valley. Like I stated before, our region is one of the most productive agricultural regions in the world, perhaps in the history of the world. Our farms produce over 55 billion in agricultural output annually. When people speak about California agriculture, it's not technically California agriculture. It's actually Central Valley agriculture, supplying more than 1/4, 25% of the nation's food and significant portion of global exports. We are therefore the key to food security within the country and the world. Key crops grown here include almonds, grapes, citrus, dairy, tomatoes, and a wide variety of fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Indeed, in meeting with the Secretary of USDA, he told me, we have perfected breakfast in the Midwest. And I told him, that's great. We perfected lunch and dinner in California. The success of our region's agriculture is directly tied to the health of our rural communities in a very impactful way, making discussions on rural economic development, water policy, labor, and sustainability more critical than ever. By hosting this conference, we are bringing national and global attention to the challenges and opportunities facing rural communities, ensuring that the voices of the Central Valley are a critical part of the larger conversation shaping the future of the West. Needless to say, for our country, food security is an issue of national security. In closing, Fresno State is proud to serve as a hub for critical discussions that impact the future of rural America. As a university, Fresno State is committed to educating future leaders, supporting research that strengthens our communities in a direct, deep, and impactful way, thus fostering partnerships that drive meaningful change. Thank you for being part and for allowing me to speak today, and go Dogs.
So we have a couple extra speakers. We will get you your break, I promise, but it might be a little shorter, just to warn you. First, I'm going to invite our director, Bruce Kane, and his colleague, Richard Luthi. Bruce is the Spence and Cleone Eccles Family Director of the Lane Center, as well as the Charles and Louis Ducommun Professor of Humanities and Sciences and a Professor of Political Science. Richard Luthi is the Silas H. Palmer Professor and former Chair of Civil and Environmental Engineering.
Well, thank you, Kate. And by the way, Kate really put this whole mastermind, she masterminded the whole thing, so the credit that's going to her is well-deserved. However, I do occasionally overrule her, and I'm not going to guarantee you a break. It depends upon how the conversation's going, so there. But you can go out and get your coffee if possible. But I do think it's important to talk a little bit about why we're here invading your territory. We come in peace, by the way, from the bubble of the blue, because frankly, there have to be more conversations between rural and urban on a whole set of issues, and we can't let this country fall apart. And we do a lot of work with the Hoover Institute. Some of on our board of directors, like the Eccles family, are prominent Republicans. Some of them are left-wing liberals. We got the whole spectrum, okay? But we all have to talk, and we all have to work on some common problems. So let me say a little bit about myself. I'm a professor of political science, and there are a whole bunch of Republicans around the state that remember the days of Willie Brown and remember that I did redistricting in those periods. So, but they've forgiven me, and we get along pretty well these days. But lately, I've been at the Bill Lane Center directing it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do. And then I'm also a member of the Door School. And similarly, Dick is a hydrologist who ran one of the largest NSF centers out here in the West. which was a center on urban water issues, but he's also done a lot of work on Hetch Hetchy and a lot of work on groundwater issues in the Central Valley. And that's what we want to talk about today, because just as in the world of energy, it's all the above. In the world of water, it's going to have to be all of the above. If we get rid of all our dams and reservoirs too quickly, we're going to lose a lot of storage and we're going to be in a lot of trouble. If we don't build additional forms of storage, we're not going to be able to deal with some of the weather and climate variations that we have to deal with, and the population growth. So let me just say, we had a program, and Hope Eccles talked about it yesterday, which is called the Rural West Program. Ironically, this is the first time we've come to California, okay? Because the Rural West Program seriously is about the interior West and parts of the coastal West that are more like the interior West. And so we've been to Utah, we've been to Montana, we've been to Washington, we've been to Oregon, we've been to Arizona, we've been almost everywhere in west of the 100th meridian. But we have saved last because we didn't want the perception that we were going to be a California-centric place of research. We believe that we would love to keep partnering with Fresno State because everything President Sandoval said is true. From the importance of applied research to the importance of working with people that have really specialized knowledge in agriculture, which Fresno State has, and what we can provide, which is different kinds of sets of skills and also access to money. And Dick Luthi is going to talk about a very ambitious initiative that we have at Stanford that will hopefully bring in a lot of money to really look at issues of water storage, water cleanliness, water transportation, all the things that we really have to take care of given the circumstances that are changing in this world right now. So I'll just say briefly about the Lane Center, the Rural West Center. The Rural West program was developed. We've gone pretty much to all of these states in the interior West. We have found issues that are very important and common. Many of them are reflected in the program here, including the health, which we're going to take on today, certainly the water, energy provisions, et cetera. But land use is one we've kind of touched on. Most of the interior West states are more concerned about what they do with the loss of extractive industry. We've kind of phased out extractive industry already here. So the whole issue about how much tourism you should have is not an issue so much for us in California. But I do think the whole question of how much of the water goes to agriculture, how much goes to the environment, how much goes to the urban and expanding areas, and what are the different strategies that we can use to use water more efficiently and to figure out how to save it. There are things getting put in the water by industry that we have to keep on top of if we're going to clean it, okay? And we've discovered already there are microplastics. And until Dick told me about this a couple of years ago, I was not really paying attention. So that challenges urban water in many ways because urban water has to clean and reuse the water that comes down to us. And we got to figure out how to do it more cheaply, and we got to make sure that we're doing it thoroughly. So we also at the Lane Center do other projects, which I'll only mention. I don't have time to talk about. But the first one is we do a lot of work on wildfire. We've been doing it for about 10 years. We saw the pattern of wildfires everywhere. We know a lot about smoke in Fresno because the Stanford Medical School was doing blood studies here. And we, the Lane Center, were the people that went to the med school and said, hey, you're already testing for what's going on in terms of pollution up and down the 99 and the 5. How about doing the wildfires? And that led to some really path-breaking studies that opened up the eyes of everybody to the importance of wildfire smoke and adapting to it and making sure that older people, pregnant women, and all the rest of us are taking the right steps when we have layers of wildfire smoke coming from all over the Western region and sitting on the basin here and sitting increasingly now in the Bay Area. So this is a common problem that people don't completely understand, and we need to work on that. We also work on, so it turns out there's a Gibson in every county. You can't go anywhere without running into a Gibson family member. We don't know what's up with that, but we are working with Bruce Gibson, who is a supervisor at San Luis Obispo, and we're working on many of the same issues, even though I agree, President Sandoval, this is numero uno, but nonetheless, there are other areas, farming areas that are still important to California. Salinas Valley being one, but up and down the Central Coast, we have a lot of, truck crops, and we're reliant in the Central Coast. I own a home in Half Moon Bay. We're very reliant on groundwater. Only a certain part, San Mateo County is really the only county that's heavily using water that comes through the central system. You get down to Santa Barbara, there's a little bit of attachment, but you got a whole area that's completely dependent on groundwater. And that Dick and I were a part of a conference, or a part of a sophomore college, which is a field trip where we take our students and expose them to the issues that up and down the coast. We also work a lot with the Go Business office of the governor's office, which is interested in business development around here. And we've been doing a project on the electrification of fleets that the cities and counties and the states have to start working on. And the problems with moving too fast on some of the technology that really is not ready, and the expense of that. So that's something, again, we can talk about if you're interested. So let me just segue over to Professor Luthi, because he really is a big leader at Stanford on this initiative that the Door School, which is a new school that brought together a bunch of elements. We had a very strong civil and environmental engineering program. We had a very strong Woods Institute, which was working on a lot of issues of resilience. And we have the Precor Institute, which works on all the above strategies related to energy, including a lot of carbon capture projects and carbon dioxide removal, which is what Selena was talking about yesterday. So they're trying to imagine the future where we're doing all the above strategies. So let me just finish by saying, let me set the context. The West has always been challenged by its climate, okay? It's why it was not settled initially. And it has characteristic climate features that are no different today, but they are different in kind, in severity, but no different from what we've had to face when we tried to settle the West. One, we have seasonality, and you know what it is, which is that we have long periods of time where the rain doesn't fall, okay? And so that means we have to do storage, just like we have to do storage for wind and solar, because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. So storage, storage, storage in water and in energy. So secondly, we have sort of yearly variance. We have some years that we're flush with water and some years we're not. And that's why we have to have all the above. Because yes, we can build more dams, and I've seen all the signs up and down, and I'm not opposed to dams, because dams are a source also of clean electricity, and we're not going to get there with just renewables. So one thing we need to do on the dam thing is make sure that people understand that you could not operate the Department of Water Resources without their dams. And they need it for their energy as well as the water. So people don't completely understand the connection. Yes, I know it's zero. But I'm the director, so I'm going to overrule you, Dylan, and your agent there. All right. And then lastly, the whole issue of regional collaboration that came up yesterday is so important. I love what they did yesterday. I love the plans, but there's a difference in every war between strategy and tactics, okay? And what we're having right now are good discussions and important discussions about what we're trying to do, what the strategy is, but we got to have a plan to implement this, which means we have to look really seriously at how we get people to do the things that we want them to do. And the JPA that was formed by Marin is the only JPA in the state that deals with wildfire problems. And the reason they did it is they got scared watching the fires that were above them in Sonoma. And they decided, look, the fire chiefs got together and said, we have to have a plan for how we prepare the communities by diminishing the threat of wildfires. We have to have a plan of how we deal with the emergencies of this, because what we saw in Los Angeles is that wildfires do not stay out in the wooey. And you get these spot fires. If the winds really get heavy and they went up to 100 miles an hour, you're going to get spot fires. And that then freezes the individual fire departments, because no mayor wants to leave their personnel out on the front line if they're getting attacked on the back line. So there's got to be a much more systematic thought of urban fires particularly for communities that are on the interface. And that's the wake-up call for all of us. So JPA is one way to go, but there are many other techniques of collaboration that political scientists have been looking at. And we need to have conversations about which ones fit what situations. Not everything can be done at the county level because some problems don't fit certain parts of the county and others. Some cities are wealthy, some are not. So there's got to be these collaborations at a new level, which is the level of the problem. It could be watersheds, or it could be aquifers, or it could be wildfire zones. So that's what we're thinking of. But now I want to bring up Professor Luthi because he really is a leader in putting together many different universities to work on collaborations related to first urban water, but he's got a new initiative that the Door School has put forward. It's called the Landscape Initiative, and they're trying to figure out what they can do on water and how they can be effective. So, Dick.
All right. Well, it's great to be here. I didn't imagine I'd ever be saying this, but I also come in peace from Stanford. I want to say a few words about an initiative that we're developing at Stanford on how to achieve more sustainable water supplies that can satisfy the needs of both the urban areas and agricultural areas. And you can see the title here. This is a proposal that we've put forth to the Door School. The Door School is a new school at Stanford, the first one, or the first new school founded, I guess, since, no, I guess in the last 50 years. And what the Door School wants to do is accelerate change in the way we think about climate, the way we think about management of fisheries, how we grow food, how we may achieve CO2 capture. We heard some of that yesterday. And their concern is not basic science, but how do things get implemented in the field? In other words, the word they use is accelerate change, the pace of change. So that's what we're interested in. And our theme here is one of how can we look at the way water comes to us in these occasional very high flows that we get, like in 2023, how can we better capture and use that water to get us through the dry spells? So that's what we're looking at. The next slide here. All right. Oh, there we go. The next slide here shows sort of the situation we have where there are various users of water. You can imagine these. You can see the schematics here. This is work that a former PhD student did to look at the Tuolumne River and where the water goes in that, what goes to the irrigation districts, what goes to the ecosystems, and what goes to SFPUC. SFPUC is the big utility that serves the peninsula in San Francisco. And what we find here is that every now and then there are these very high flows that if we could capture and use that, it could carry us over in the dry spell. But how do we do that? So we have this issue of climate change, drier dry spells, and occasionally very wet spells. We also have another issue here. And when we think about water on the Tuolumne and other rivers here in the Central Valley, it's always been a tension, I would say, well, at least in the Bay Area, between urban and ag. But in 2018, the Water Board said for the rivers that feed the San Joaquin, we're going to have to leave more of the flow for fish. And between February to the end of June, it might be 40%. So imagine the dams weren't there. Whatever the flow is, 40% to fish. Now in a wet year, that's okay. There's plenty of water for everyone. But in a dry year, it's just a pinch. And being from San Francisco in that area, the irrigation districts have priority rights. And so it puts a big stress on San Francisco, SFPUC. But this calls into question then about how can we do a better job of thinking about this climate effects that we're seeing, these wet spells, how can we capture and use that water to the benefit of both cities, ag, and the ecosystems? So what's shown here on this graph is that there is some excess flows. And that's illustrated here by these, by the sort of the gray bars here. If we can capture and use that, it will get us through the dry spell. How do we capture and use these flows? All the good dam sites have been built. So the only place we can do it is put it in the ground. And that brings us to the irrigation districts and to the Central Valley to look at how we can do projects together to accelerate the pace of putting groundwater recharge basins in the Central Valley to capture and hold these high flows. And what we're thinking of is dedicated basins. They have certain advantages. The dedicated basins will have small dikes. You fill them and they drain, fill them and they drain. They work well. You can manage the contaminants. This is an important thing about how do you manage the geogenic contaminants. How can you manage that recharge water so you don't mobilize arsenic, chrome, and uranium? And we've heard some of those concerns before. Another one is what's the capacity of our infrastructure to handle these high flows? Right here where we are in Fresno Irrigation District has a challenge. The water is in the east, but the place to put it in the ground is in the west. And so how do you get all this water to move across the city? That's a challenge. Or in Madera, another irrigation district we're working with, what's the capacity of all that infrastructure to carry high flows? Where would we make investments for that? And once we start talking about investments, we have to think about the underserved community and the rural communities. How does this work? And we heard some great talks yesterday about how do things work for small communities? And this is an important part of all of this. So it's partly hydrology, it's partly geochemistry, and Bruce, as you know, it's also political science. So that we can work together to solve our common problems. So that's where we're going. This proposal we've put forward, I guess, I can go to the next slide. This is there's one more. Yeah. Here's an example of a recharge basin. This happens to be at Madera where we were visiting and where we want to put in some monitoring wells this summer. But the idea is how can we accelerate the pace of putting in these recharge basins? The irrigation districts are doing it, but how can we make that accelerate so we can put more water in the ground and do it safely and in ways that benefit all the communities? So that's the pitch on our proposal. Our partners here are irrigation districts, some nonprofits, a group at Stanford. And I can say, you know, you got sort of water engineer, you got the geochemist and Scott, and you got the Lane Center to help us deal with regulation and policy. Another area we're working is down in Coachella as well. So our field sites are, you know, they're kind of down by the Salton Sea area and here in the Central Valley. I came to this conference to learn, and I'm really pleased to say that I've learned a lot, and I hope to see more of you, or you all more often, if our project gets funded. So with that, I'll say thank you for your attention, and I guess Bruce and I may have time for a few questions. Thank you.
So it's your call. You can either ask a question or you can get something to eat. All right, we have a question over in the corner. Yeah.
The question is about rainwater capture. And in certain parts of the country, if you're in the humid Midwest, rainwater capture works very well at small scale. Here, the problem we have is it rains, you know, over a certain period of time. And if you want to capture that runoff, the question is, where do you put it? And even in the Bay Area, then if we do that, we have to put it in the ground somewhere. The cities right around the edge of the bay don't have the right geology for recharge. So to do stormwater capture or runoff capture at scale, you have to build some infrastructure that will take it to a lake or to little ways away from the bay where you have the right geology for infiltration. If you want to, you know, if you want to make a big impact, rain barrels don't work. That's what it is. You can't build a cistern big enough. We have to make the subsurface our cistern. Right here. Well, that's a really good question. And so the thing is about where's the best place for recharge? I'm no expert on this, but I will say that the irrigation districts have been in business for over 100 years. They know where the best places are for recharge. And when they set an offer up, they say, we will buy farmland and here's the price that we will pay for it. They know where the best places are to buy land for recharge. So I think the answer to your question is when you get outside of the irrigation districts, all of that work is really good. But within the irrigation districts, there's so much experience. We can just draw on that. That's kind of the idea.
I have a question for Bruce, because I think he's going to have the hardest job with this project. I think the science and the where to put it and how to take care of the water quality will be pretty straightforward, but still work to do. But it's the politics that's going to be really the issue. And so I'd love to hear from Bruce kind of his approach on how he would look at this project and deal with the political issues.
So so the answer is that this problem of collaboration affects almost every aspect of local government. Okay. So every time we take students out into the field, whether we're talking about water, whether we're talking about energy, whether we're talking about traffic, whatever, the number one thing that all local elected officials tell us is we got to do something about collaboration. And a lot of our former efforts have not succeeded. So where you start is by looking at where we've had success. Now, there are problems because often with the best cases, because the best cases are often places that have really, really good resources. And so they make things happen because they got the money to make it happen. But you start with that. And that's why we started with the Marin JPA. That's why we're in conversation with San Luis Obispo about how they're handling their GSAs and the governance of that. And there may be some places where you resort to auction markets and market mechanisms to help make the choices more efficiently. And there may be some places where you have to start much more slowly with informal agreements and subsidies, even though they're less efficient, just to get people on the same page. So I think it's a more nuanced picture, but it starts with what are the alternative ways that communities can collaborate on various problems? What's the right scale? Because so often we have things that are set up for a scale for different kinds of public goods. We have it set up for transportation systems, or we have it set up for policing, but we don't have it set up for the natural boundaries of the problem that we're dealing with, whether it's aquifers or whether it's lake pollution or whatever. That has to be at the scale which is given to us by God, okay? And then we have to figure out how to get collaboration out of it. So yes, you start with best cases, but then you have to have an understanding of the nuance of the different approaches. And this is something actually a lot of political scientists have been doing up and down the state. There's a whole network of people that are not always in the political science departments. They are people doing political science within sustainability units. A lot of it is applied research. There's a huge focus, not just at Cal State, but all over, to get our students out into the classroom and get them more real world experience. So I think it's all doable, but we have to have a coordinated way of doing it. I think we set, or do we? Yeah. So this is the beginning of a dialogue. We come in peace. We don't have all the answers or maybe any answers, but we're here to listen and we're here to figure out ways that we can collaborate and complement each other's strengths. Okay. So that's the word we'll leave it. So we probably warn you out. You need your coffee. And we will start. We've got a really great set of panels today. So let's take a quick break and then get back to work. Okay.